not bad for a librarian. Perhaps you should have spent more time in the pit. And perhaps you should have spent more time in the library.
Bra weeb grana weeb ninnybong YouTube. RedWhiteandBluestreak here with my 7th Transformers review. Sorry, I'm starting to lose count. But today we're taking a look at Magic Square MS B36 Doomsday, or as he's more commonly known, the Buckethead himself, Megatron. So lately we've looked at a lot of second attempts at legend scale versions of characters, but Doomsday here is actually the first legend scale representation of Megatron done by Magic Square. Though this is a later reissue of that same mold, but still, point still stands. And since this figure isn't really available anywhere else, I ended up going directly through Magic Square for this one, which, yeah, coming from overseas, it did take some time, but the figure came in one piece, I'm happy about it, and the price really couldn't be beat. So the original figure came out in 2020, which was, yeah, well, that was a year. And this reissue is the 2022 edition of the figure with some updates to the color scheme, which we'll get into in a second. Now let me start by saying I love Generation 1 Megatron. He's deliciously evil for the sake of just being evil, and he transforms into a gun that's held by the single most treacherous Decepticon besides himself, which I find absolutely brilliantly ridiculous. That being said, I'm about to tear this figure a new one. Before that, let's get into the packaging, which is actually really nice. So this figure came out during an interesting transitional period for Magic Square, as well as an interesting period for the world, but you know. Anyways, Magic Square was starting to shift away from the plastic windowed packaging that we see nowadays with New Age towards a more masterpiece-esque windowless form of packaging that's kind of similar to what we used to see with New Age. Weird coincidence. As such, the packaging is a nice in-between for the figure, even with the 2022 reissue, though it did get a bit dinged up in shipping, unfortunately. There's a nice render of Doomsday on the front with this very nice purple grid pattern on the front of the box. We get a window in the front giving us a nice view of the figure and a silhouette of the battle at the dam from one of the first G1 episodes on the back. Inside, Doomsday comes packaged in a clear plastic tray with an insane amount of accessories. Later, we'll get into those later. Now, I did have a pattern for these reviews that I had, you know, starting with robot mode first for one, then vehicle mode for another, and then robot mode, and then, you know, yada yada yada, but that pattern was kind of broken with... This was basically just a long-winded way of me saying that we're going to be starting with the robot mode first. Because you need to see the decline into insanity. Doomsday is fantastically sculpted in robot mode, and the 2022 version of the figure actually has an interesting glossy paint job decorating the figure that both benefits and curses it at the same time. The original run of the figure was largely unpainted like most of Magic Square's releases and had a darker gray as a result. Personally, between the two, I think I prefer this one, at least in terms of color scheme. Details like the ab buttons were already present on the original release of the figure, which were very nice, but this version of the figure sports this nice off-white paint job that definitely won't yellow unlike some figures, and a nice paint job on the legs that elevates this release to the new heights in terms of aesthetic for me. In short, the new color scheme puts this closer to the G1 animation model, at least from what I can tell. And looking at this guy, you can hardly tell that he transforms, and that's mainly due to how clean everything looks. For the most part. Especially the back of the figure, despite not really being cartoon accurate. Though that comes at a grave cost. But we'll get into that later. So like I suggested earlier, the sculpting and painting come together in a perfect holy matrimony, from the textured cherry red inner thighs to the lovely collection of colors decorating the beautifully sculpted ab section to even the different faces that this figure comes with. And yes, this was a very out of character segue for me going into the accessories. You got me. Doomsday comes with a series of expressive faces, as I mentioned. He has a stern frown out of the box, a yelling face, and on the more positive side, his maniacal laughter face, and his "this is the most pain I've been in but I can't let Prime know it" face, with a chest piece to accompany it. He also has this blank chest piece, and I'm not sure what the point of this is. I know there's a toy accurate paint deco for this figure, and maybe that's what this was meant for, but honestly, I have no idea. If anyone knows, please, by all means, comment down below. He also comes with this mini Megatron gun so he can play with it, have other Legends figures hold him. I'm sure this is more for stop motion or photography more than anything else, and it's really nice that they included it. He also comes with this alternate handle so that Magic Square figures can actually hold him, though I personally think this handle is too long, but it looks fine when it's in a figure's hands. Doomsday also comes with the key to Vector Sigma without artificially inflating the price, Hasbro, and a little Crimzeek, which he can hold in his open hands. On the topic of hands, he also comes with a set of fists and a set of relaxed hands out of the box, like most Magic Square releases. Of course, he also comes with his fusion cannon, which is nicely sculpted and coated in a nice glossy finish. And he also comes with the stock and silencer, which are coated in that same gloss finish and are more for the gun mode. But they can also double as a flight stand for the robot mode if you fold out this peg, split the stock a little bit, and lift up this trigger on his butt. Very nice, actually. Speaking of guns, he also has this little number from the movie, which is supposedly Blitzwing's gun. This sword from the same scene, his Energon mace from More Than Meets the Eye, which is actually sculpted in a swinging pose, which is nice, and he does come with a chain to get it free swinging, but I honestly don't really prefer to use that chain, and plus the chain's just a standard metal chain instead of being purple, so it really looks out of place, so forget I even mentioned it. And he also comes with this helmet he used to control a clone of Optimus Prime that one time, which is an accessory I don't think I'll really display him with, but I don't doubt that the battle damaged face and chest piece will see some use as time goes by, since the accessories combined with the articulation can allow you to pull off some pretty awesome displays. So the head's on a peg, so it gets you the full 360. The head can look up about that far thanks to a hinge at the base of the neck, and you can actually cheat a little bit using a little bit of the transformation to get him to look down a little bit farther. The arms can go around the full amount, and can go out about that far. There's a very tight bend at the elbow to get you a little bit more than 90 degrees, and an equally tight bicep swivel, which I think is mainly due to the paint. There is of course a wrist swivel. There's a pretty nice waist swivel, and there's an ab crunch, but no arch. Once you move the hip skirts out of the way, he can do the splits. He can kick forward pretty much all the way if you move the hip skirt out of the way, and can kick even farther back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, and another cut just above the knee to allow for another swivel. There is a single jointed bend at the knee that actually allows you to get a little bit farther than most single jointed knee bends on figures. There's not much of an ankle pivot, but there is articulation to allow the foot to rotate down, as well as articulation to allow the toe to rotate up. As I mentioned, you can get this guy in some insane poses, and combined with the accessories can create some pretty nice displays with him and the other Decepticons, or him in Light of Victory, which looks amazing with him, by the way. As usual, Magic Square absolutely dominates the articulation and robot mode department, but the alt mode. Oh my god. That was something, that's for sure. Magic Square continues to use this softer plastic with their figures, which, in this figure's case, I'd almost be willing to give it a pass, since it feels surprisingly better made than the original one, which may mainly be due to the paint now that I think about it. But I can't because this transformation exists and serves as a painful reminder of the materials used and the cost of engineering a transforming G1 Megatron with a clean, non-parts forming back. And unfortunately, after all that pain and suffering, and having to use Son of Empire's video as a guide since the instructions are hardly any real help, thank you, Son of the Empire, I still don't have a complete gun mode. I wish I could get him in the complete gun mode so I could take him and shoot myself after how painful that transformation was. There were lots of thin plastic bits slipping under my fingernails here. Look, I get that getting a robot to turn into a gun without shell forming isn't the easiest task, let alone getting a highly articulated, well-sculpted G1 Megatron to perform the task at a legend scale, but I feel like there could have been a better attempt here, at least materials-wise. I mentioned the softer materials in my previous review for Light of Victory and Pit Lord, but to their credit, despite showing some concern for the longevity of the materials, I still trusted them then, and I still trust them now to hold up for future transformations. The internal parts used for a lot of the transformation on the internals of this figure, however, feel leagues worse than anything any other Magic Square figures use, to the point where I actually do feel this figure will break after a few transformations. Heck, that's why I actually recorded the transformation sequence in reverse. On top of that, I really don't like forcing the hinge for the leg in place, because the material is so soft, it actually warps as you try to transform the leg, which just isn't acceptable considering all their releases before this figure, as well as the price of this figure from most retailers, including Magic Square themselves. Fantastic releases like Jazz, Sideswipe, and Ironhide all retail for less from all other retailers, and you get a better experience overall. To add to the negative parts of the transformation, that modified part I showed earlier shouldn't have been necessary. Now, I'm no toy designer, but either removing those pegs or making the slots for the pegs extend all the way to the inside of the chest would have made things a lot easier and wouldn't have made this alteration necessary. The only reason I was able to figure my way around this issue was thanks to someone having the exact same problem on TFW. This suffering just didn't need to happen. Right, well, on the positive side, the gun mode, or at least what's there, isn't the worst. I mean, it's no Bold Form's Gladius, that's for sure. Yeah, the feet could have been folded in more, but if you can get the gun to form at least to here, you've got a nice stand for the alt mode. And also, to its credit, everything from the robot mode that isn't meant to appear here in the gun mode hides away nicely, with the exception of the ab panel in the complete gun mode. The accessories that are compatible with the gun mode, the stock and the silencer, both look great despite the incomplete look of this mode for me. And the included light, which is also compatible with the robot mode, and the gun in multiple ways, looks great here. But overall, this mode sucks, and it's largely due to the journey and the fact that after all that I went through, I couldn't even complete it. Right, well, let's bring down the Energon Axe into final thoughts. The robot mode looks amazing. The sculpting is brilliant for the mode. It cleans up from every angle, and the paint job for this reissue elevates this mode to perfection, in my opinion. The accessories, while excessive like most masterpieces as well as most Magic Square releases in general, feel worth it and don't artificially inflate the cost too much, unlike another set I've reviewed previously. And the articulation, as always, is absolutely on point and solidifies Magic Square as the top dog of Legend scale in that department. However, this figure drops the ball into a pit of hungry Sharkticons with the transformation and materials used. I get that engineering a fantastic G1 Megatron in both modes is no easy task, and my heart goes out to anyone that has to engineer something like this. Yes, even you, Goldforms Gladius. But considering Magic Square's previous releases, as well as how many times this figure has been reissued, where they could fix those materials, as well as how appalling it is to have a Transformers figure that you A, hate transforming, and B, can't even fully transform, if at all, I just simply can't give a pass on this. So look, if you want this figure simply to have a G1 Megatron for your Legends collection that scales with Light of Victory or maybe other Prime releases and have no plans to transform this figure, then this figure is a 4 out of 5. It is an amazing piece for the collection in that regard and will definitely look good in a stop motion from all angles, with both New Age and Magic Square figures alike. But if you're like me and love to transform your figures back and forth from time to time, I can't recommend this. 2.5 out of 5, and that's me being generous at that point. The materials make me worry if the next time I transform him will be his last, and it sounds like I'll be buying the New Age one to fill the gap here.